Now, parents are being warned to be vigilant as school children might unknowingly be smoking vapes laced with the street drug spice, according to an investigation by the University of Bath.
Yes, the synthetic form of cannabis carries dangerous side effects. So now one teenager has spoken to the BBC about how he became addicted to spice at the age of just 14 after using spiked vapes. He's been sharing his story with our reporter Annabelle Rackham.
I was asking for it so much, it's like, I just feel like a drug addict. I'm literally doing it just so I can feel normal. There still wasn't that voice in my head kicking in, like, you shouldn't be doing this. I still, like...
You couldn't stop?
Yeah, I couldn't stop.
This 16-year-old, who, along with his mother, wishes to remain anonymous, is describing what it's like to be addicted to spice, a lab-made drug which is supposed to mimic the effects of cannabis.
I found myself doing it literally every second of the day.
Were you doing it in class?
Yeah, I was bringing it to school, like...
Actually,
it was like another
in
part of me.
class?
It was like a stink extension of
During
me.
lessons?
Yeah. I'd literally put it in my sleeve, I'd, like, do that, and then I'd just use it
See,
in
I
class.
didn't know that.
He became hooked on the drug for more than a year, buying it in liquid form.
I was about to throw this bag away, actually.
Gradually, my grades started going down, because obviously in lessons I was just not paying attention. I was just too busy getting high, like, in class, and then I just was using it to pass the time, kind of, and I didn't see school as any use to me at that point. Like, I didn't care about grades or any of that. I just cared that I made it out of school.
Spice, which is responsible for half of all non-natural deaths in prisons, can be more harmful and unpredictable than cannabis, causing dizziness, breathing problems, heart palpitations and seizures. There have been a number of reported hospitalisations of children after using spice vapes in schools, and police forces like this one in Devon and Cornwall are trying to find ways to identify use in the local community.
So we've got an upgrade for you to the device you've got for detecting spice and THC and some other synthetic drugs.
With help from the University of Bath, they're upgrading the kit they use to detect drugs in vapes that have been seized locally, particularly from schools in the area.
We know almost nothing about the effects of spice on children. I think that's one of the really concerning things. All of our understanding of what spice does to the human body really comes from people that are in prison or maybe homeless. And when we talk to people that are using spice, they talk about being the worst drug they've ever used, even outside of heroin. They talk about the withdrawal being really severe. They talk about becoming addicted incredibly quickly. So we have no knowledge about how spice really affects children, particularly in the long term.
It's a concern for police too, who want to get across how much danger children who use spice vapes could be putting themselves in.
The children are in a vulnerable position to be exploited, bribed and enticed into that gang culture and kind of forced to do things that they wouldn't normally go ahead and do.
As part of Chris's work with the University of Bath, he found out of nearly 600 confiscated vapes from schools, 1 in 6 contained spice. He tested vapes from a random selection of 38 schools across London, West Midlands, Greater Manchester and South Yorkshire.
He couldn't stop.
Mm-hmm.
And his friends were even telling their mums that it was bad. And so their mums would tell me, and I really appreciate that, that, yeah. Because it takes a lot of support from friends. Sorry, I didn't want to get upset, but it really helped. Like all my friends were helping out. It was a really bad time.
Luckily for this family, Ben, now 16, was able to beat his spice addiction and start a new chapter.
Then it clicked to me, like I didn't need it anymore. There wasn't that voice in the back of my head that was like, oh, you need more, you need to buy another one. I kind of just wanted to keep it normal after that, after those 3 weeks.
And we had a nice Christmas, didn't we, last year?
Yeah.
Annabelle Rackham, BBC News.
Well, to talk about this in a little more detail now, we're joined by secondary school head teacher Tony McCabe and Detective Constable Nick Burnett from Devon and Cornwall Police. Nick, if I can come to you, first of all, We've just seen a really disturbing piece there, the report we've just shown on television. But can you just explain to us the effect that these vapes that are laced with spice, that the effect they might have on young people?
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning. I don't think that the children are aware of what they're buying. They believe they're buying THC vapes, which is one of the active ingredients in cannabis, but they're getting it cheap. And a THC vape will generally cost about £35, which will contain 1 gram of THC. And they're getting these vapes cheap, probably for about £10. They kind of cling on to your cannabinoid receptors in the body the same way as the cannabis receptors would do. But they're a lot more potent. They're chemically made. There's hundreds of different strains of spice, and they just stay to those receptors and cling on for longer. So therefore, children are overdosing, becoming unconscious and becoming unwell.
And this is about education, about those young people knowing what it is they're actually buying and what is in them. There just isn't that information. If it's something that's being sold sort of on the black market like this, or it's been manufactured by not a reputable provider. Yeah,
absolutely. And the message of don't take drugs clearly doesn't work. That hasn't worked for a long time. So it's about educating, letting the children make informed decisions themselves, making their peers look out for them, and be aware of the signs and symptoms of what they might be taking.
Nick, I'm fascinated by what you've just said, that message, don't take drugs, just doesn't work. So how do parents, teachers, police officers like yourself, how do we talk to children about these things?
Again, it's educating them, it's making them aware of the signs and symptoms, making them aware of what might happen to them, that they're putting themselves in a really vulnerable position. Latest figures out last week have confirmed that there was one spike-in a secondary school in the UK that was linked to a sexual assault. And I think they're taking it thinking it's going to be cannabis and they'll be fine, and they just don't understand the dangers. And that's what we need to try and get home is educate the people of the dangers of what they're taking.
Tony, you're with us. You're a head teacher, aren't you? How big a problem is this? Not only vapes, because we've talked about that a lot, but vapes that contain this specific chemical, so be it spice or THC?
Up and down the country, I've had conversations with other head teachers to see that the impact of vaping in schools has a tremendous impact upon the behaviour of young people. So seeing the addictions rising in young people, seeing the need for a young person to visit the toilet, to be able to use a vape. We've had vape sensors fitted at our school in every single toilet cubicle. And even though there are vape sensors there, our young people still actually use the toilet cubicles to use vapes. And that tells me that their addiction is so strong that they are now calling for attention and to be noticed so that they can work with staff and have a good dialogue going. And
if they are at that point where they are so desperate to have access to their vape, they have to go to the toilet where there's a sensor, what other effect is this addiction having on them in terms of their behaviour and their learning? How does it affect them?
Well, you see outside of school young people quite often with a vape in their hand, just clutching it almost. It's like a snuggly blanket as a toddler might have, and it's almost like that vape supplies all their needs. In terms of their learning, if they can't focus on their studies because they've got an addiction to something, then that will take them away from their learning and ultimately affect their life chances when they leave school.
Nick, I'm interested in what the police response would be in being able to test what's in these things and crack down on the people that are making them. What powers do you have to be able to do that?
It's the dark web. A lot of the products are bought from the dark web, so actually targeting the sellers is difficult. Again, the easiest thing to do is to target the people buying them, and then if we can shrink that market, then obviously that the profitability for the sellers goes down massively, and they're probably unintended consequence. They move on to something else. But that is going to be the way forward, I believe.
And how quickly, if you're able to do that, how quickly might you be able to crack down on this and maybe stamp it out a bit more?
Yeah, well, Professor Chris Pudney from Bath University and his team that have made the kit, it allows us to get the results within minutes. So that's a great help for us. It helps identify certain areas, helps identify hotspots within our force area. We're looking at running some operations later on in the year and early part of next year to truly highlight the issue we've got down in Devon and Cornwall. And then once we've got that bigger picture, we can move forward and make strides to combat it once and for all.
And Tony, I mean, the whole point of vapes was to try and wean people off tobacco products, wasn't it, and stop young people getting into smoking. It's had the entirely opposite effect when we look at things like this.
It has, for the simple reason that you can use a vape in secret. It doesn't smell in the same way as a traditional cigarette. And therefore, schools have a role in educating parents and carers to see the real dangers, that it could be laced with spice, it could be laced with another cannabis derivative, and that could have a devastating effect upon a young person.
It really is interesting. We'll talk about it again, I'm sure. But Tony, thank you. And also to Nick there joining us. Thank you both. Really interesting.